Hello there, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much for joining me for today's webinar on our Oxford 1+1. Before I get started, folks, can I please just ask you a quick favor? There is a questions box on your software there. If you can just quickly write a simple yes, if you can hear me okay. Let me know that I'm coming through loud and clear before I carry on any further. Thank you, everyone. They're all coming through. Perfect. Great. So, welcome. This webinar will take no more than an hour. We are being recorded, and so if you have to unplug or go back to work or you have other things to attend to, please don't worry. By registering today, you will receive a recording of this webinar in the next couple of days from Oxford. So if you missed some of it, if you want to listen to it again, you will be able to have the option to do that. We're going to focus today on our 2-year program, the 1+1. Some of you may be familiar with this, some of you may have read a little bit about it so far. Hopefully we can answer some of your questions. So as the questions come to you, please do share them. If you write them in that question box, if they're relevant to the slide that I'm on at that time, I'll answer them straight away. But we will have some time towards the end where we'll have dedicated Q&A. So please do send the questions through as they come to you. I'll get to them as soon as I can. What I would say is that I will try and answer them, as many of them as I can. However, if your question is very personal to you, very specific to your profile, to your own path that you're trying to take, if it doesn't apply to the group as a whole, I might save those questions and have a conversation with you via email rather than on the webinar today. There will be an email address that I can share with you later that you'll receive the recording from in the next day or two. So that is the email address to use. Should you have any questions, we'll have more details on that a little bit later on in the webinar. So we'll get started. And again, thank you for joining me. We are delighted that you're here to talk to us today about the 1+1 program. This is a 2-year program. It's relatively unique to business schools. What we're looking to do here is to find future global leaders that are looking to excel and specialize maybe in an area that benefits from a second year of education. So what we're looking to do is partner a master's degree in whatever area that you're looking to do from a list of approved partners in the wider university with a second year of the 1-year MBA. And so we'll go through this again in more detail in a little while, but essentially what it means is that you have a 2-year experience here at Oxford rather than just the 1-year MBA or the 1-year master's degree on its own. You get 2 degrees in those 2 years. It gives you a bit of additional time for a career transition. So if you're looking to take a deeper dive into a certain area that you really want to specialize in, that first year in the MSc is quite targeted. It's quite specialized to your area that you pick. And then the second year, you transition into the MBA, where you can apply the learning that you've had in that first year into a more general, wider aspect business portfolio. Even if it's a 2-year program, it can still be more cost effective than some of those traditional 2-year MBAs, and it gives you the chance to really specialize and get ahead in your field or your sector. One of the big aspects and one of the big, I think, draws to the MBA is the Pershing Square Scholarship, which we'll have a slide on in more detail, but essentially the Pershing Square Scholarship will cover your tuition costs for both of those years, plus a living expenses stipend that allows you to come to Oxford for those 2 years and not really have to pay any tuition at all and really pay much in terms of living expenses, because that stipend will contribute a lot to it. So we'll go into more detail for each one of these points as we go through the presentation. For people who are asking the question, this is a very good question. Thank you for reminding me. Let me introduce myself first of all. My name is Liam Kilby. I'm one of the MBA recruitment managers here at Oxford Said. That's K-I-L-B-Y. I've been working here for almost 3 years, recruiting for the 1+1 and for the 1-year MBA program. I have traditionally been in the North America, South America market. So if anybody's listening from those regions today, there's a good chance our paths may have already crossed. But in terms of 1+1 and in terms of the future of the program, in terms of recruitment, we're looking to spread that out more across the team. Some of you may have been in touch with my colleague, Aidan O'Halloran, in the last 12 months. Aidan has moved on to a new challenge elsewhere, and so we're looking at the 1+1 now and breaking that down in terms of recruitment within our own regions. So we don't really have a standalone 1+1 recruitment manager anymore. The recruitment team that I'm one of the members of will be looking after the full-time MBA and the 1+1 in our regions. Thank you for reminding me to introduce myself, Jeremy. That's a very good question. Thank you. So moving on. What we're looking to do, as we've said here, is for you to pick a partner program to the one-year MBA that allows you to get this level of specialism inside of your learning, inside of your experience. Some of the partnering departments include the list that you can see on your screen there. And I'm not going to go through all of them because you can see them for yourself, but it shows the range of the MSCs, the master's degrees that you can pick from and partner with your MBA. So it's not just a narrow track that everyone that does the 1+1 follows that same path. It is a very diverse mix of people. It's a very diverse mix of experiences. And it's a very diverse set of goals that people are trying to achieve after that 2 years. These are the only official departments. Within these departments, there will be a number of different options of degree, but these are the only official departments. So think of Oxford University for people that don't know this, and forgive me if you do already. The University of Oxford is an accumulation of different departments that run certain programs. So Saïd Business School is a department. It runs the MBA, the Executive MBA, the Masters in Financial Economics, the business-related degrees. Each of these departments in the wider university run their own related degrees. And so you would belong to one of these departments in your first year, doing their master's degree, and in your second year, you come to the business school as a department, and you then belong to us while you do the MBA. And that's essentially what happens in terms of that transition. It's always the master's degree in the first year, and the MBA in the second year. It has to be in that order. There's nothing stopping you from doing the MBA and then while you're here thinking, actually, I would benefit from doing a master's degree in my chosen field of study. You can certainly do that. You can apply for the master's while you're already here, but you will not be a 1+1 candidate. You will not qualify for the Pershing Square Scholarship. To be in the 1+1 family, so to speak, you would need to do the MSc first and the MBA second, and that is pretty non-negotiable. Just looking at some of the questions that are coming through, making sure that I'm covering everything that you need to cover in this instance. Okay, yes, at the moment we're fine. So a little bit more detail in terms of the actual degrees that you can pick from. So these are the degrees that sit underneath those departments that we had on the previous slide. And you can see here, again, just what level of diversity there really is to choose in terms of your option. Now, some of these are more popular than others. For example, the MPP, the Masters of Public Policy, is probably the most common choice when coming to a 1+1 for candidates. But we do have representation, or we certainly have had interest in almost all of the lists that you see on the screen here. We've had a question about, is it possible to study the business school in 2 years in the business school? No, we only offer 1-year programs in the business school for the MBA, unless you're talking about the Executive MBA, which is a modular-based program over 20 months. The business school section of the 1+1 is 1 year. So you can see here the list of MSc programs that you can pick from. Not all of them are Masters of Science. You can see other things there as well. And so it really is a very nice mixture of diversities. As an example, we've had a candidate in the coming year or so that has worked in Justin Trudeau's office in Canada, coming in to do an MPP and an MBA. We had a lady come in, or is coming in, I should say, who has partnered African studies with the MBA to help develop the work that she's been doing with the World Food Programme in the UN via Rome into the continent of Africa. We have somebody from Beirut who is very closely linked to the UN and the NGO space, looking to partner his MSc with an MBA. And so it is a very eclectic mix of people and a very eclectic mix of goals and dreams that they're trying to achieve. So you'll notice that not all of them are business related. That is what the second year is for. You would expect, again, to take that deeper dive in that first year and then apply your learning to a business environment in your second year. And what we're looking for here when we look at applications for the 1+1 is, does your partner program and your MBA, along with your work experience so far and the goals you're trying to achieve, does that all make a clear picture, a clear journey that you're trying to go through? And that needs to be very much a yes for you to be considered. We've had a question about the list of master's degrees and will it expand, will it change? We're constantly looking to review it. As I mentioned a few seconds ago, some of them are more popular than others, some are far more popular than others. And so the ones that are maybe chosen less frequently potentially might drop off. They might be replaced by others, they might be augmented by others. And so we are looking to review this on an annual basis. This is what we're offering in terms of the official partner programs coming up to this next recruitment cycle that opens in a month or so, and we'll talk about deadlines a little bit later. Can you be accepted or can you apply to more than one MSc and then choose one of them to be in the 1+1 program? Yes, you can. One of our Pershing Square scholars this year applied for two, relatively similar. So social science of the internet and then a computer science one, and chose the social science of the internet as the one that she wanted to take forward. So you can apply to multiple programs, but when it comes to making the decision of which one you pair, then yes, obviously you would need to choose just one of those MSc degrees to partner with the MBA. I'm just going to leave this slide up just for a moment. I understand it's a relatively long list. Please do keep the questions coming through if you have any relevant to this slide. I'm just going to make sure that I'm going to go back and check that we have them covered. It looks as though we've got all of the relevant ones answered so far. We had a question around, do we accept people that do not have a business background? And certainly, yes, we do. So for example, a lot of these MSc programs, as I mentioned before, aren't business related. And so they will look for relevant interests in that field. They'll look for maybe relevant education already in that field. When it comes to the MBA, to the business school, we don't really mind at all if you have a business background or not. Again, it goes back to that journey that you're trying to go on, and does your work experience, whatever it may be in, does your undergraduate field of study, whatever that may be in, does it all paint this picture of success when it comes to your experience, your 1+1 choice, your MBA, and then your future career? And so that should all kind of be on the same page, for want of a better phrase, but it certainly does not have to be business related. We have had a question around, can we choose an MSc that is not on this list? I would say that these are the official partners, and as such, this is your list of options for the 1+1. Should you have any questions around the viability of choosing something else, then I would recommend that you get in touch with me or with one of the team, and we can have that discussion separately. But I think it's important to say at this stage that this is the list of partners and the list of courses that you can choose from. We've had a question around age. Is there anything like too old or too young in terms of applying? No, we'll talk a little bit about the average age and the average work experience you need for the application requirements. But effectively, the age range of the MBA on the second year, people roughly go from maybe 24 years old through to mid to late 30s. For the MSc, that can vary wildly depending on what stage of your career you're in, what stage of life that you're in. So what I would say is that most 1+1 candidates, therefore, has been accepted onto both of those programs, will fall between the MBA range of around 24, 25 through to 37, possibly 38. And that doesn't mean that you can't apply if you're outside of those ages. It just means that if you're at the older end of that spectrum, then a one-year MBA and going back to school at this stage in your career needs to make sense for your career goals. If you're at the younger stage, at the younger end of that age range, then I would say we'll look at your work experience so far, your practical work experience, and see if it fits with what you're trying to do when you graduate, and do you have the experience practically already to be able to make that a success. Just to clarify in terms of the teaching of these programs, Anurag, thank you for your question. Yes, you are taught the MSc, the master's degree, first in year one, normally a 9-month program, could be 12 months depending on which option you pick. So September through to June, July, August of the following year, you then have a bit of a summer break, and you come back in September of the second year and join the one-year MBA. Moving on to the scholarship, the Pershing Square Scholarship, as I mentioned, is open only to 1+1 candidates. And again, you need to have been accepted onto both of your programs to be considered for this. It covers tuition and college fees and a living expense allowance for both of those years. And this is a bit of an overview of what we look for. What I would recommend you do if you think you are going to be interested in applying for the 1+1 and therefore for Pershing Square. We do have a section on our website, and we can link this in the email, including the recording in the next day or so, that talks about our current scholars, our current Pershing Square scholars. I would recommend reading a little bit about them, about the work they're trying to do, because that kind of sets the tone for what we're looking for in a Pershing Square scholar. So this is talking about the scholarship rather than just being accepted onto the course itself. We're looking for academic achievement. So a good GPA, a good undergraduate degree result, a good GMAT score or a GRE score. You will need to take one of those tests for your application simply because the MBA requires it. Leadership potential, demonstrated through experience or motivation. It doesn't mean that you have to be managing a huge number of people or large teams, just that you have led in some way. Personal character, integrity, and commitment are huge when we're looking for the kind of personality, the kind of person we want to be a Pershing Square scholar that will represent not just the university, but also the Pershing Square organization in future interactions. We're looking for somebody who is looking to address a world-scale social challenge in your career at some point. Either you've already begun to do that, or you're thinking that you have a business idea once you've graduated that can really create a positive social impact, or you're looking to maybe join an organization that is already strong in that space as one of their future leaders. But that is a big part of what we look for when it comes to the Pershing Square shortlisting. Looking at envisioning how to achieve scalable and sustainable solutions to these challenges. That goes hand in hand with the previous point. And quite importantly, how the 1+1 will allow you to fulfill those objectives. And so what you're looking at there is talking to us about what you can gain from the program to be able to then put in place to achieve those goals, to achieve the tackling of the world scale social challenge and everything that we have just covered. What I would say here is that the Pershing Square Scholarship itself has its own application requirements, and we'll cover those now while we're on this slide. So when you come to apply, and we'll talk about the application to the program in just a moment, there will be an essay that you write regarding the Pershing Square Scholarship, regarding the 1+1 itself. So you'll have to write about why you think the 1+1 is important. That almost covers that final bullet point on this slide here, how the 1+1 will allow you to fulfill your objectives. That's what we're looking for in that essay. There will also be a Pershing Square essay and then a Pershing Square interview should you be shortlisted for one later on in the year. And so effectively, you will probably find out about acceptance onto the programs before you know if you have been shortlisted for the Pershing Square Scholarship. That's roughly the timeline of how it happens. The Pershing Square shortlisting is done around April, May. The interviews happen May, beginning of June. And in the last couple of weeks, we have let the incoming scholars know that they have been successful. So it's around this time of year, a touch earlier, maybe mid-June, you'll hear that you have been accepted onto the scholarship with a yes or a no. You'll already know that you're in the programs because you have to have been accepted onto those programs to be shortlisted in the first place. So it is a bit of a distinct two-stage process. Apply to the programs first, apply to the Pershing Square Scholarship at the same time, but find out about the programs before you know you're shortlisted for the Pershing Square Scholarship. How many students do we have with the scholarship every year? Good question. Thank you, Anna Rudd. The number is around 5 or 6, depending on the quantity, depending on the quality, depending on the caliber of the candidates that we have apply. And again, seeing who does become successful in their application to both of those programs. We've had a question about the application process. Do we apply on the same application form or is it different? It's very different. We'll go through it in just a second. And then one final question, are all of the master's departments housed in Oxford? Yes. You will be a member of the University of Oxford for both of your years, in one department for year 1 and then in one department in year 2, the business school in year 2. How many people apply to the Pershing Square Scholarship? Effectively, I would say everybody that applies to the 1+1 will also apply for the scholarship. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's a good scholarship to go for. It covers a lot of your expenses. So I think everybody that applies to the program applies to the funding as well. That will vary year on year. We normally have between 10 and 30 1+1 students in any given year. So for example, as we come up to August this year, we've got one batch of students that are just about to finish their master's degree and join us on the MBA from September. And we've got one incoming batch of students that are just about to start their master's degree in September and will join us here at the MBA a year from now. And so there's normally 9 or 10, up to about 30 people in any one of those years. So over the course of both of those years, between 20 and 60. And they've probably all applied for the Pershing Square, and 5 or 6 will obviously get it, as I've mentioned. There are no regional limitations for the scholarship. Himan, no, thank you for the question. It is open to everyone around the world, provided that you fit the criteria on this slide. Just a little bit about life in Oxford. You will be an Oxford University student for both of your years. That means you'll be in one of the colleges for a couple of years. The MSc that you choose will have a list of colleges that you can choose to be a member of as part of that first year. We would normally recommend that you stay in your college, the same college, for the second year, because moving colleges in between those 2 years can be a logistical struggle. And so you're likely to be in the same college for both of those years. The college choice you have will depend solely on which MSc you choose. Some of those departments will have links with some colleges, and some departments will have links with other colleges. And so we have around 38 colleges in total in Oxford. Depending on the program you choose for your first year, your college choice might be restricted to maybe 12 or 10 or 8 of those colleges, and you would pick one of that list and then probably stay there for both your MSc year and your MBA year. Now, the college comes with accommodation. They'll have formal dinners, they'll have balls, they'll have parties. You'll be a member of the Oxford Union. You'll see lots of speaker events that happen in the Oxford Union. There's also sports and societies and clubs. And so it's very important here to understand that during your master's degree in that first year, you'll be a 1+1 member of the family, but you won't really see the MBA that much because that comes in your second year. Instead, you'll be in your department, in your college, studying with other people that have chosen the same MSc as you, but then surrounded in your college by hundreds of other wider university students that are studying maybe an undergraduate degree level, a graduate degree, or a PhD in any other field of study. And so the network you can build is really quite large and quite varied. In your second year, you'll be in the business school, you'll be studying your MBA with maybe 300 other people in your MBA. And again, you'll be in your college where you'll have maybe some of your MBAs with you, but because you can choose from a number of different colleges, not all of the MBAs will be in the same one. And so you'll have that second network again. So being part of that wider Oxford experience, being embedded in that wider university, gives you access to a real breadth and variety of people and personalities and experiences and outlooks. And it's a really great chance to build your networks and broaden your own horizons by being surrounded by these people that might challenge the way that you think or might challenge the way that you've historically done things. And it's a really good learning experience, even outside of the classroom. And so the application requirements, and this slide is for the MBA. What I want to say here, folks, is that depending on which master's degree that you pick, the application requirements can be quite different from each other. So we'll go over this slide in just one moment. Instead, I wanted to talk about the MSc first. They generally will look for different things than we at the business school will look for. Now, you'll apply to both programs in the same academic cycle. It doesn't have to be exactly at the same time. You could apply to the MBA, say, in September. You could apply to the MSc in November or January. It doesn't have to be in the same recruitment month, but it does have to be in the same academic year. Your applications are quite different. And so what a lot of people do is do one of them first and do the second one later and not do both at the same time, because doing both together can be a big piece of work because there's lots of different moving parts that are unique to the MBA and then unique to the MSc application. So my recommendation is to narrow down the master's degree that you think you really want to study, or maybe a top 3, and then look at the application requirements for each one of those things. Essentially, there'll be some essays that you'll have to write, maybe a personal letter, like a supporting statement towards your application, a little bit about why you want to study that. They'll look at your undergraduate GPA as a strong considering factor in terms of whether to admit you into the master's degrees or not. And then we at the MBA, we at the business school, we'll look at these things that you can see on your screen. So we still want you to have an undergraduate degree, of course, but we want more professional experience. Generally speaking, for the MBA, you're looking at about 2 years of professional experience, with the average in the class this year of being around 5 years of professional experience. But the minimum is 2. The average we have this year is about 5. We at the Saïd Business School will want you to have a GMAT or a GRE score. You must have one of them. There is no way to have a waiver for that test. The MSc department will not really care what your GMAT or your GRE score. They might glance at it. They might ask you if you've taken it. They'll know that you're a 1+1 candidate, so they'll know you'll have done it at some point, but it won't really factor into their decision for being admitted onto the master's degree, whereas it's quite important for us at the business school that is a competitive score. On our website, we'll advertise that a 650 in the GMAT is roughly what we're looking for. The class average for this year is 690. Anything 650 or higher is competitive. Anything 700 or higher is a really strong score, and we're now talking about maybe Pershing Square Scholar level GMAT scores. GRE, we're roughly looking at about a 160 on the verbal side and a 161 on the quant side. That equates to about a 650 on the GMAT score. So that's a competitive score, 160, 161. Anything higher than that, or any combination of the two that comes out to be higher than those two added together, is a stronger score, and then again, getting towards scholarship conversations. We don't really have a preference as to which one you pick. If people out there have done both, you'll know that actually one can be a little bit more weighted towards quant. GMAT is a very quant heavy exam. GRE more is, if you're stronger at verbal, you might score better in the GRE. So pick whichever test you think suits your strengths in the most effective way, and that's the one that you go for. Don't think you have to take the GMAT because that's all we accept. We genuinely have no preference. Go for the one that gives you the best chance of being admitted. You do not have to take both, just one or the other. Here at the business school, we're looking for a couple of references. If one of those can be academic, great. If one of them can be professional, great. You can have 2 professional if you've been out of school for a while and actually your referees are better placed to come from your place of work. That's perfectly fine. They can both be academic if you want to. One of each is ideal. Choose the people that know you well enough to be able to talk about your strengths in a constructive way. Don't fall into the trap that some people do, where you choose the most senior person you can find because you think the CEO, by his or her position, will therefore automatically hold more weight in their opinion. That's not what we look for. We look for people that can talk about you in a good level of detail about your successes, your strengths, and even your development areas. We want to know how you want to develop and where you think you can develop, and your referees will often point that out to us in their answers to the questions. So choose people that you work with on a close basis. It could be a supervisor or a manager. It doesn't have to be. It could be a peer or a team member. It could be a client or a customer that you work on behalf of, or it could be even a personal mentor that you have, but somebody that knows you well enough to go into some level of detail about your strengths and your development areas. We have a new video assessment this year. We'll go into a slide about that in just a second. That replaces one of our main essays. That has gone. We do have a supporting statement, and that essentially is just something that allows you to tell us something that you would like us to know about you, something we can't get from your application, whether it be a passion you have, a sport you play, an interest you partake in, something that makes you unique and different from the crowd. That is what we're looking for in that supporting statement. And for some of you that are listening, you might have to take an English language proficiency exam. That can be either the IELTS or the TOEFL, and this is required if you don't have English as your first language, or you have not studied a degree level qualification at an English speaking university. So let's say, for example, English is your second language, but you studied somewhere in the UK and you studied your degree in English, you will not need one of those exams. If English is not your first language and you studied your university degree in your own country, in your own medium of instruction, your own language, then you probably will need an IELTS or a TOEFL. And we have minimum scores for those tests that you can find on our website. The maximum number of references that are required, Nikita, thank you for your question, is 2. We'll accept no more than 2. What I would say is if during the course of your application you connect with existing students or you connect with alumni, they can informally speak to us in the recruitment and admissions team and say, I met with Nikita, that person looks like they would be a really good fit for the program. I would endorse them, that we admit them into the program. That can be an unofficial third reference. Don't put that person down as one of your referees, just have them contact us independently and give us their thoughts. It's a nice way to be able to maybe add a third voice to that conversation. But in terms of official formal referees, the email addresses that you provide to us to email out those referee letters will only accept 2, no more than 2. The video assessment is quite new. We do have an application tips webinar coming up at the end of the month where we'll go into this in a lot more detail. I don't want to get away too much from the 1+1 on today's conversation, but just briefly, it essentially is 5 questions. 4 are video questions, 1 is a written question. You submit your answers to these questions as part of your application. So by the stage deadline of whatever stage you're applying in, you'll have some prep time, you'll have some time to practice some questions, and then you have a timed assessment. And so essentially what happens is within our application form, you will click on a link that sends you an email to Kira Talent, a third-party platform that allows you to register on there and get access to those practice questions. You'll have, as long as you want to, with those practice questions, just to look at yourself on the webcam, kind of like talk out loud, see how you sound, see how you come across. And then when you're ready, you'll click through to the official timed questions, and then there will be 4 of these via video. The first 2 are relatively short. They're designed to get you talking about your motivation. Why do you want to do an MBA? Why is now the right time? Maybe ask you what you think is different about an Oxford MBA rather than others. They're designed to be quite quick, punchy answers. And then the other 2 video questions are a little longer, and it will interrogate your competencies. So we'll maybe ask you a question around leadership or communication or working as a team or self-awareness. And so we have pre-recorded a bank of questions that you will be assigned a couple of at random. The first 2 questions behind motivation, everybody will face the same 2. The second 2 questions will be a random question from our pre-recorded bank that will allow you to talk about your experiences in a question that, again, looks at your competencies and how you've worked practically in the past. The 5th question is a writing prompt that appears on your screen. You then have a certain amount of time just to type in your answer then and there into the answer space on the platform. And then you submit, and that forms part of your application. So it is not sent after you apply. It is part of the application process. It is new. It'll take a little bit of getting used to, I think. It's essential that you click on the link within your application, and this will become clear when you open the application, please don't worry. But it's essential you click on that link as you work through the application and make sure those video responses are recorded before the deadline passes. It is not separate. It's not done afterwards. It is part of your initial application to the program. The MBA application form will open on August 1st online on our website. In there will be a drop-down menu and a tick box that says you are considering for 1+1, and that will let you give you a chance to tell us which program you are considering. So there'll be a drop-down of all the official partner programs that we talked about earlier on the slide. You pick the one you're going to apply for there and let us know that you are considering to be a 1+1 candidate. That's how you tell us that you are considering the 1+1. We've had a question about the weighting of the video assessment and how much weighting is given to it relative to the whole application. It's the same as everything else, and I know that sounds like an easy way out, but everything is weighted exactly the same. There is not one thing in your application that will make or break your application on its own. If you have a low GMAT score, for example, don't think that you can't apply because you don't meet the class average. That's not an issue. We'll look at every aspect of everyone's application and view it in a very holistic manner, in a very much, it's a sum of the whole application rather than focusing on individual aspects that may or may not be as strong as some of the others. So don't get me wrong, it's an important part of your application, but everything is an important part of your application. It is not more important than anything else. They are all weighted equally. And so the process looks a little bit like this. It is two distinct applications. On the left, you have the first year, your master's degree. On the right, you have your MBA, your second year. And don't forget, please, folks, that you apply to both of these programs roughly at the same time, certainly in the same year. So even though you're applying for the MBA and you won't take that maybe until 2 years from now because you're doing the master's first, you still apply to them both at the same time. They don't have to be at the same deadline, as I mentioned before. You can work on one, submit that, and then a month or two later, work on the second one and submit that. And that actually would be my recommended path to take, simply because, as I said, doing both at the same time can be a bit tiring. So you choose your master's degree, you check their admission requirements, you submit the master's degree by whatever deadline that department has for that master's degree. And these deadlines will change based on which master's you choose. So please ensure that you research the application requirements for your chosen master's degree as thoroughly as you can. You then receive your offer. Now, one of the differences between your journey in your application for the MSc and your journey with us for the MBA is that your department for the MSc may or may not interview you. They might just use your application materials as a way of deciding whether or not they want to offer you a place in the course. So your business school for the MBA will always interview you. If we think you are qualified for the course, we'll interview you and then we'll offer you a place. That interview stage might not happen depending on which MSc you choose, but will always happen for the MBA. On the MBA side, you take your GMAT or your GRE. Traditionally, that is the thing that, in terms of number of hours at least, takes the most time, because you want to make sure you give yourself time to study, to get the score that you're looking to achieve, that is a true reflection of your ability. And then you apply by a certain stage. Now, the master's degree generally has one deadline a year, possibly two. You must apply to the master's degree on or before that deadline. The MBA, we have 3 or 4 stages normally throughout the year. You can apply in any one of those stages to be considered for the MBA. So again, it's a slightly different process. You'll definitely have an interview for the MBA, as we mentioned, and then you will receive the MBA offer. We've had a really good question, Christina, thank you, it's a great question. What happens if you get into the MBA but not the MSc? So if you think about it, your goal was to do a 2-year program, year 1, master's degree, year 2, MBA. If you do not get into your MSc, but you do get into the MBA, we'll just bring your MBA forward by a year. So you don't have to fill that year that you would have done the MSc with something else. And so you can bring that forward by a year and join the MBA class a year earlier than you had originally planned on. There is a relatively high level of flexibility around the 1+1. The only thing that I would say is that deferring generally isn't really an option. If you're accepted, you are expected to go, and if you're unable to go for whatever reason, you will probably withdraw and reapply when you're ready again. It's unlikely that you'll be able to defer really either of these programs. For the MSc and for the MBA, you normally have around 30 to 60 days to accept your place on each of those courses. Emily, thank you for your question. It does vary a little bit depending on which stage you've applied in. It varies a little bit based on which MSc you've chosen, but roughly speaking, it's between 30 and 60 days. Now, don't forget that you'll probably have applied to both of these programs. You will have received an offer, hopefully for both of them, and you are yet to hear about maybe your Pershing Square application that is later on in the process. And so you might want to ask us to delay your acceptance date until you know if you've been accepted onto the scholarship to help funding with your programs. And that's fine. We are very flexible about the deposit deadline you have to pay a deposit by, about your acceptance date. We know that you'll be waiting for Pershing Square in some cases, maybe other scholarships in other cases, and it's important for you to hear back from them before you start paying non-refundable deposits. With the 1+1, it's a little bit different. You don't really accept your MBA place and pay your deposit to secure that place until after your first year has finished. So you'll do your master's degree, you'll accept that place sooner than the MBA because you're there for the first year. You'll do the master's degree, you'll finish that year, and then you'll tell us formally whether or not you want to take your place in the MBA. And it's at that point in your middle summer that you pay your deposit for the MBA. If you're applying just for the MBA, you have to pay your deposit a month after you've had your offer of a place in the course. But the 1+1 is different because you're not joining for a couple of years. You don't have to pay your deposit straight away, which does give you a bit of flexibility that when you finish your master's degree, if you decide that the MBA is no longer necessary, you can withdraw. And because you haven't paid a non-refundable deposit yet, you don't lose any money. To apply for the Pershing Square Scholarship, and this is a very important point, you have to be an applicant to both of your programs before January. So we're coming up to 2020, January 2020. If you're looking to join the 1+1 in September 2020, you can start applying to both your MSc and your MBA from this August, a year in advance of your MSc, 2 years in advance of your MBA. You apply to both in the same academic year, as I've mentioned. We have in the MBA, we actually have 4 deadlines next year. You can see the first 3 of them on the screen. We have another one in April. The reason the April one isn't showing is because in order for Pershing Square to be an option, you must apply to us no later than our January deadline. Again, looking at the MSc deadlines, depending on which one you pick, they will have definitely a January deadline. In some cases, maybe a November deadline. You can apply a bit early. In some cases, maybe a March deadline. They will always have at least January and maybe one other, maybe November and January, or January and March. If the master's degree of your choice has a January and a March deadline, and you're thinking of Pershing Square, you must apply in the January deadline. You cannot qualify for Pershing Square if you apply in the MSc deadline of March or the MBA deadline of April, which isn't showing on your screen. That's why we've cut it down to 3, because for Pershing Square, a January application, no later than January, is required to both of those programs. You will miss the deadline for Pershing Square if you have not applied to the programs on or before of January. With regards to the chances of being a Pershing Square scholar, does it matter if you apply early? Absolutely no difference whatsoever. Pershing Square will wait until the January deadline has passed, until the interviews have happened, and until the offers have been made, to then collate everybody that's been made an offer on both their MSc and their MBA and use that list to shortlist from. So if you've applied in September or you've applied in January, it doesn't matter. You'll be on the same initial list that Pershing Square gets that they then choose to shortlist from. What I would say in terms of general acceptance onto the MBA, earlier can sometimes be a bit better because January is a very busy window. A lot of people choose to apply to the MBA in that January window. The numbers spike in terms of the application numbers we receive at the school. So if you're looking to maybe increase your chances, applying in September or November puts you up against fewer people that are competing for the same spots, whereas January is a very busy month. The bonus of applying to the MBA earlier is that then it gives you lots of time, maybe a couple of months, to concentrate on the MSc application for their January deadline. And that's the path that I think a lot of people take. They'll do the MBA application first, stage 1 or stage 2, September or November, be interviewed, get that out of the way, get the MBA offer under your belt, and then give yourself some time over the holidays, over the winter, to get your MSc application ready for their January deadline. I hope that makes sense. Please do send some questions through. The overall takeaway from this should be ringing in your heads that you need to apply to both of your programs on or before the respective January deadlines to qualify for the Pershing Square Scholarship. Stephanie, thank you for your question. Can you apply in between the deadlines? You can. Absolutely, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. What I would say, we don't really offer like a rolling admissions process here at the school. So if you apply on, say, like October 1st, thinking I'll get in early for stage 2, November the 1st, I'll apply a month early. Your application will effectively sit on our system until the application deadline has passed, and the working day after November the 1st will pull all of the applications off the system. So it doesn't really give you a benefit at all in terms of admission onto the program, in terms of being viewed early. The only benefit it has, I guess, is that it's done, it's out of the way, and you can then concentrate on the MSc application instead. So you can apply whenever you want to. It doesn't have to be on these days, but we only review the applications once the deadline has passed for each one of those stages. Gabriel, thank you for your question. If one informs that he wants the 1+1 during the MBA application, must he apply for the MSc afterwards? You don't have to do it in that order. You can apply to the MSc first, but as I've mentioned before, both applications must be done in the same academic cycle. And when I'm talking about academic cycle here, folks, is that our applications open on 1st of August and they run through to our final deadline, which for us at the MBA is April. So August to April is our academic recruitment cycle. The same for the colleges. Whatever their final deadline is, January or March, that is our academic cycle. So you need to have applied to both programs within that cycle, starting from August 1st this year through to the final deadline next year. Can you apply for the master's degree and then a year or two later apply for the MBA? Yes, you can. We have a number of people that are coming through the MBA this year that have been here before at Oxford to do an MSc. You're not a 1+1 student because they have to be concurrent years, but you can do it. Being an Oxford alumni already, being a graduate of the programs here at Oxford can help your MBA application. It doesn't automatically give you a yes in terms of interviews, but it can certainly strengthen an application if you talk about it in a way that it impacts your career post MBA. But to be 1+1, it must be the MSc followed immediately by the MBA, and you must have applied for both of them in that same year. So next steps, this in terms of 1+1 application can be a bit of a lengthy process just because there are those two applications that you have to get through. Download a brochure from our website if you haven't already. If you haven't taken the GMAT or GRE, please do that as soon as you can. That is a big aspect in terms of the amount of time it will take you to get the score that you feel you deserve. Come and see us at an open day. We have a number of open days throughout the year. The next one is at the end of August, the 23rd of August, I believe. If you can't make it down on that day, then come and see us at any other time. We have a campus visit form that you can download from our website and ask to come and see us with a few days notice, please, if you don't mind. We'll give you a tour of the school, we'll answer your questions, we'll look at your profile personally, we'll talk about your own ambitions, your own career goals. If school's in session, there'll be a lecture you can observe. If the students are in, then you can meet some of those for lunch maybe, and we can get a little kind of, day of events happening for you. But drop in at any time, but please do give us a bit of notice via that campus request form. And then start your application. August 1st, the online application portal opens. You can go on, you can save your progress, you can come back to it later, you can do it bit by bit if you want to. Don't forget that the Kira Talent platform is embedded within your application, so click on that link and get access to the Kira Talent as early as you can to give yourself plenty of time to practice, to familiarize yourself with how it looks. That is a big part of your application from this year moving forwards. And then generally just keep the conversation going. If you have any questions, by all means, reply to the email that you get with the recording over the next couple of days and let us know what questions and concerns that you might have. I'm just going to leave a slide from our dean up on the screen and then mute my microphone just for a couple of minutes while I run through some of the questions that have been coming through that I haven't been able to get to. And I'll come back in about 2 or 3 minutes for a Q&A session where I'll try and address as many of them as I can. So thank you for bearing with me so far. Thank you for your attendance. If you have to go, please don't worry. This will be recorded and be sent over to you. If you can stick around, please give me a couple of minutes. I'll just go through and have a look at some of the questions and I'll be back with you very shortly. Hello again, everyone. Thank you very much for staying with me. We've got some questions that we're going to run through, and please do keep sending some through. We've got a few that might take up the next 6 or 7 minutes, but if you have a question that has not been answered so far, then we might still have time. We've had a few questions come through about the number of applications we receive for the 1+1. So as I mentioned before, the number of people that are on the course is anything from 10 to 30 in each one of those 2 years. Applications-wise, we generally get around 100 applications for the 1+1 specifically each year. Now that will then have its own impact in terms of acceptance rate, which is the second part of this gentleman's question. Now, what I would say here is that depending on which master's degree you choose, your acceptance rate might vary quite wildly compared to someone else that you know that's applied to another department, simply because some have a higher level of popularity than others. So I talked about Masters in Public Policy, the MPP. That is quite a popular course, not just with 1+1 students, but in the wider university as well. And that has capacity of about 120 people, but the MPP alone gets about 700 applications each year. So 1 in 7, roughly, is the acceptance rate for the MPP. Other master's degrees that you might want to partner the MBA with might have a higher or lower acceptance rate based on which one you pick and how popular it is, and therefore how competitive it is. Part of that decision, part of that acceptance rate, links to another question that we had around GPAs. I mentioned earlier in the session that your department for the master's degree won't use your GMAT or your GRE as a show of academic strength. That's for the business school really alone. They'll use your GPA. And so what we're looking for in terms of the MBA application is around a GPA of 3.5 in the US style, or a 2.1 in the UK style, an upper second class degree. Now, please don't worry if you've studied outside of those two countries and you have a different GPA or a different style of grading. You don't have to convert that. We'll do that conversion for you when you apply and when you provide your transcripts. But that roughly is the equivalent of what we look for acceptance into the MBA. Again, some of those MSCs are very competitive, and as such, the GPA that you might need to be accepted into the MSc could be higher than a 3.5. It could be a first class degree that you need to be accepted, and even sometimes a really strong first class degree in some areas. And so it's difficult for me to say on behalf of each of those departments what they look for, but generally speaking, a minimum 3.5 GPA or 2.1 in the UK, but essentially the higher your GPA, the more chance you have of being accepted onto the MSc. The higher the GPA for the MBA, yes, it's a strength in your application, but as long as you have other strengths in your application, a lower GPA won't necessarily preclude you from being accepted. So we look at all of those things we had on that slide that we talked about, your referees, your GMAT, your GPA, your work experience. We consider all of those things equally. Some of the departments will look at your GPA, and that may be the overriding factor for their decision for the program that they run. So again, research the MSc of your choice, maybe reach out to the admissions team in that department and ask them those questions themselves about what they look for in a candidate. We had a question regarding scholarships in Pershing Square. The question is, if you are successful with Pershing Square, can you also receive other scholarships? And you can. You're eligible for a number of different scholarships, both in your first year and your second year, and they will range quite widely in terms of what it can be, the amount, the reason that you're awarded it. What I would say is that if you're accepted for Pershing Square, because it covers pretty much everything, then you probably will lose the other maybe part scholarships you've been offered, because it's not essential that you keep those when your tuition is covered 100% by Pershing Square. It's not uncommon, for example, for Pershing Square candidates to also be quite strong candidates for another scholarship, our SCHOLS scholarship for social entrepreneurship, because some of those criteria do overlap a little bit. You probably wouldn't be awarded both of those because they both cover tuition 100%. They both have a living expenses stipend. And so we'll try and keep that scholarship, that fund, to be given out to as many people as we can, rather than overlap scholarships and give you more than one. We've had somebody ask a question about maybe they have applied this year and were maybe on a wait list. For the MBA, sometimes we have a waitlist option in our final stage. The question is, does it make sense to apply again? And I say absolutely yes. If the MBA is still part of your journey and still looking to be what you're wanting to do, then clearly you're a strong candidate. if you applied in April, and I'm assuming that you did in our final stage, forgive the assumption, it just meant that we physically ran out of space in our class to give everybody that we really liked an offer of a place, a firm offer of a place on the course. And so we operated a wait list. So if somebody were to withdraw, we had very strong candidates waiting to hear about a place that may have opened up. But if that does apply to you and you're still interested, then yes, absolutely, please do feel free to apply again. You'd be very welcome to. Folks, thank you again for all of your attention, for all of your time. We are running out of time a little bit. On the email that you'll have in the next couple of days with the recording, we'll have some really useful links about information you can read about. That will also be an email address that you can reply to. I'll include my contact details in there as well. So if you have any questions that we haven't quite got to in this hour, I'm very, very sorry. We try to get to as many of them as we can. Please do reach out to me as soon as you have that email address and ask me any questions that you want to cover in the meantime. Hopefully we'll speak to you very soon. Hopefully we'll see you on future webinars. We hope to have an application from you over the coming months. Please do reach out with any questions or concerns. And thank you again once more for joining me on today's session. Bye for now, and hopefully we'll see you soon.